Hello, my name is Amanda Kinney. I'm an 8th grade math teacher at Texas Middle School. I am presenting today Chapter 11, Aligning the Curriculum, from our Gladhorn textbook. The first thing that Chapter 11 does is it calls for a rationale of curriculum alignment. Curriculum alignment is the process for ensuring that what is written, what is taught, and what is assessed are closely aligned. Curriculum alignment based on research and with a focus on standards-based curriculum can provide a remedy to the situation in order to improve achievement for all students. Teachers are expected to take some control of instructional practices in their classroom. They must also maintain the alignment that is of what is written, what is taught, and what is tested. As organic and enrichment elements cannot be assessed and monitored, the alignment process should only focus on the mastery curriculum. The majority of the rest of the chapter focuses on curriculum design and the process of the curriculum design. Curriculum design is usually coordinated by the district administrator and enhanced by outside experts. Curriculum design falls into 5 categories. You have goal development, dividing the courses into units, planning units, and formulating lessons. Goal-based design is when you set clear and practical goals for what will be explained in the curriculum. Some of the goals that you need to think of, some questions that you need to think about when forming goals is: what is the mission of the school? What should the students be learning? What role does activity-based learning play? What strategies and tools should be used? Administrator also needs to look at several principles when designing curriculum, such as community involvement, developing quality leadership within its teachers and staff, incorporating learning centers, that the curriculum is driven by technology, that technology is not just a tool used in the curriculum, and set assessment and evaluation standards. When organizing the alignment process, there are several critical steps that the curriculum alignment process should look like. The first thing that should be done is appointing a curriculum alignment task force. This task force will include district administrators, district supervisors, school administrators, teachers, and parents. The task force needs to create its own planning guide indicating the steps to be taken, the deadline for each step, and those responsible for each step. They also need to determine the scope for the project, for example, what grade level or subject area is going to be covered. Then they will make the plans to orient all key groups that will be involved and affected by the alignment process. Organizational strategies with the task force will, their next step will be to determine whether the curriculum will be standards-based or integrated or a blend of both. Although the new push in the last decade has been for curriculum integration, the movement toward an accountability and standards-based curriculum is fighting that integration. But 3 things that the task force will need to make sure that they are focusing on is the sequence of the curriculum. When should the standards be taught? How should they be taught? How long should be spent on each standard? Vice versa. What elements of the curriculum are going to be required, and then what are going to be electives. That's going to be more in your secondary and your secondary, middle school, high school students. What courses are going to be required of them to graduate, and then what courses will they be able to have choice in. And then you also have to have coordination and integration. Make sure that across disciplines and across grade levels that there is coordination and integration of different learning experiences. It is very important that the task force takes careful consideration when determining the list of mastery objectives, as this will become the basis for the entire curriculum. You should have, when identifying the mastery objectives, you'd have sound assessments should reflect the clear achievement goals. The objectives that are required by all require careful structuring. And then this is divided, the driving force of assessments and teacher materials. those objectives that should not be included in the curriculum or the mastery objectives are those that are too difficult to assess with district-made tests, objectives that are not considered essential for all students, or those objectives that have been emphasized at some time in another grade level before or will be at some point in the future. The next step in the design process for alignment of curriculum would be to determine developing curriculum-based tests. The first thing that a task force will need to determine is the scope of the test and how often the test will be given. How many forms of each test you will need. Say you have a lot of special education students taking the test, you will need to have some modified tests based on state standards for that. Or you might also have to have different versions where you have some pre-AP tests versus your regular classes and things like that. The next step will then be to develop a pool of test items for each objective. That way when you make a test, not all tests are going to look the same. Every year might not have the same questions on the same unit test. When you have a pool of questions to pull from, the generating a test then becomes easier. The next thing you will do is construct pilot forms of each test, give them to the stakeholders, the teachers, let them review them. If they find any mistakes, they're easy to correct before you give them to the students. The next thing that the task force will then do is develop a scoring system so that teachers, administrators, parents, students understand the test results and how they, what they mean, what they say, how they determine the mastery of each objective. And then the last thing is there will also need to be a review of the test to ensure that test items are valid. It kind of goes back to the constructing the pilot forms of each test, just to make sure that we're not testing students over objectives that aren't taught at that certain grade level. Next, the task force will then be charged with correlating the mastery list of objectives with the instructional materials available for its teachers. There are two goals in making sure that you have instructional materials and that you find them that are aligned to what is being taught, and that is you ensure that there are adequate materials available for the teachers, but then it also helps the teachers when they are creating their instructional goals and plans for the year and for the unit, for the lesson, and vice versa. Next, the task force is then charged with developing instructional planning aids for its teachers and staff. The three types of instructional planning aids that help teachers and staff plan for the year are the yearly planning matrix. We call this our YAG at Texas Middle School, our year at a glance. When the units should be taught, what objectives should be taught during each grading period, to kind of like an overview of how the entire year is going to look. The management planning matrix is developed for the curriculum leaders to implement, evaluate staff development programs, and making sure that the goals are measurable, can be used by the teachers, when they're going to be taught, when they're going to be implemented. This is kind of where your staff development comes in. And then your unit planning guides are used for making sure that a teacher not only knows the objectives that are supposed to be taught in each unit, but also the sequence of the objectives that should be taught, the best sequencing, how it helps the students, and the teacher then implements based on the unit planning guide. Next, you have your developing reporting materials for the alignment process. The first thing you have 4 types of report materials that that should be carefully considered, and that's the planning report, the class diagnostic summary, the individual student report, and data analysis reports. The planning report summarizes student performance for each class on the previous year's summative tests, so that would be like last year's STAR exam. It's distributed to teachers, and the teachers use that report to determine which objectives need additional review on top of what is going to be taught at that grade level. The class diagnostic summary is provided for the teachers after each test, so this would be like your unit test data at Texas Middle School. This would be our unit assessment data through Eduphoria. Teachers use this to then plan post-test remediation for its students and make adjustments in the year and unit forms. The individual student report provides comprehensive information for each student. It is also distributed after each major test. Gives the student's name, indicates all the objectives, how many they got right, how many they got wrong. And this can be used to inform parents and students of their progress within the year. And the last is the data analysis report. Often provides practical tool to help educators make better decisions based on information collected over a period of time. So this data analysis report is usually what teachers use to drive their instruction. Do they need to slow down? Do they need to re-teach for mastery of some objectives, whether or not their students are understanding what's being taught? The next thing at this point in the alignment process, curriculum alignment process or project, it is important to start providing staff development for those teachers that are going to be affected by the curriculum alignment project. You also need to orient your parents and your teachers about the alignment, help teachers use test reports to drive their data, helping the teachers, the staff development that helps teachers create their yearly and unit plans, staff development on how to monitor teacher planning and instruction, but also for teachers, teachers need staff development on identifying those new mastery objectives, using those mastery objectives in their planning, locating and using instructional materials. This is probably the biggest one for teachers that they appreciate the most, is not only knowing where the instructional materials are located, but also how to implement them and use them in the classroom. Then teachers also need to understand how to teach for mastery of each objective and then communicate the test results to students and parents. The last step in the curriculum alignment project is how you monitor and evaluate it. Throughout the entire alignment project, it should be monitored and evaluated to make sure that it's working. You can find this by making sure that by using data analysis, monitoring teachers, teaching, monitoring their classrooms, how they work. But you also need to ask yourselves if all necessary instructional materials have been provided, are tests being administered and scored on schedule, are staff development sessions being conducted as planned, and are they judged by the participants to be helpful, and are principals and supervisors helping teachers plan effectively, teach to mastery objectives, and to use those results in instruction. Those are the 4 questions that need to be asked every time a curriculum alignment project is started and evaluated. This unit has really been eye-opening to me, as my goal eventually is to be a curriculum administrator, and to know the process. It's kind of overwhelming in a way, and then I'm hoping that eventually, as I learn more, that I will be able to incorporate this into my future plans. Thank you so much, and I hope that you enjoyed this little time. I'm sorry about my voice. My phone's been going off. The Rangers are scoring right now. That's my phone in the background, so I'm sorry about that, but I hope y'all have a great rest of your summer. It was a joy to have y'all in class, and I guess I'll talk to y'all later.